The tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers. Have you ever had a moment when everything felt like it was spiraling out of control? So you tried to hold on tighter? You made lists, schedules, backup plans. You micromanaged your day, your thoughts, even the people around you. You tried to plan for every outcome, control every variable, predict every emotion, and yet, nothing went the way you wanted. The more you tried to steer your life, the more it seemed to resist you. Like holding water in your palm, only to watch it seep through the cracks of your fingers. And in those moments, have you ever wondered, why is it that the more I try to control, the more chaotic life becomes? You wake up in the morning already anxious, already calculating. You scroll through your phone to get a grip on the day. News, messages, calendar, expectations. You're not living, you're managing. Managing stress, managing people, managing outcomes. But at some point, you start to feel like you're managing your own collapse. We've been taught that control equals safety. That if you control enough things, you'll feel okay. That being in control is being powerful. But what if that's the biggest illusion of all? What if the very act of trying to control life is what's tearing us apart from it? I'm not talking about being careless. I'm talking about something deeper, about how, in our search for certainty, we lose touch with the present, with spontaneity, with flow. Think about it. When was the last time you truly let go? Not out of despair, but out of trust. Trust in yourself, in the moment, in the unknown. The truth is, the obsession with control is not a sign of strength. It's often a mask for fear, fear of failure, fear of pain, fear of being vulnerable. But here's the paradox. The more you fear life and try to control it, the more disconnected you become from living it. So what if, instead of gripping tighter, you learn to open your hand? What if freedom doesn't come from control, but from surrender? And what if letting go isn't giving up, but waking up? This is the journey we're about to take together, not a journey of gaining more control, but of discovering a quieter, deeper kind of power. One that begins the moment you stop fighting the current and start trusting where it's taking you. Chapter 1. The illusion of control is the root of inner turmoil. When Sarah was a child, her world often felt unstable. Her parents argued a lot. Plans changed without warning. Promises were made and broken in the same breath. So she learned early on that if she wanted to feel safe, she had to create the rules herself. She became the girl who always had a planner. She color-coded her classes, scheduled her free time, even wrote down when she would take breaks. At first, it felt empowering, like she was the architect of her own peace. But as she grew older, that craving for control didn't fade. It intensified. In college, Sarah's calendar became a fortress. Every minute of her day was accounted for. Study sessions, meals, workouts, even relaxation was planned. She was productive, yes, respected, admired, but inside, she was exhausted, anxious. One unexpected email, one friend canceling plans, one unscheduled emotion, and her entire world felt like it was collapsing. She didn't know how to be if things weren't exactly how she'd planned them. We don't talk enough about the emotional toll of control. How it starts innocently, a way to cope, to feel safe. But over time, it grows into a prison, because the more you try to control, the more you become afraid of anything you can't control. And let's be honest, most of life, it's out of our hands. So why do we cling to control so tightly? The answer lies deep in the human psyche. Control gives us the illusion of predictability. It tells us that if we just do everything right, nothing bad will happen. If we manage every detail, we can avoid pain, rejection, failure. It's a lie that gives comfort. If I can control it, I won't get hurt. But here's where it gets dangerous. When control becomes a coping mechanism, we stop developing resilience. We don't learn how to ride the waves, we try to freeze the ocean. Sarah once missed an opportunity to study abroad, a dream she'd had for years. Because the uncertainty terrified her. What if I don't like the food? What if I get sick? What if I fall behind in school? Her mind spiraled into a web of what-ifs, and instead of taking the leap, she stayed in the safety of the known. But that safety became regret. She still talks about it sometimes, with a quiet bitterness in her voice. This is what the illusion of control does. It tricks us into thinking we're protecting ourselves while silently robbing us of the very experiences that make life rich and meaningful. Let me ask you something. How often do you cancel on yourself because something feels too uncertain? How often do you choose routine over growth? Comfort over risk? Control over connection? There's a reason this matters. Because when you live in constant control mode, you begin to lose your adaptability. You fear spontaneity, you see surprises as threats, and you stop trusting, not just the world, but yourself. You start thinking, if I'm not in control, everything will fall apart, and that's a terrifying way to live. Sarah ended up in therapy in her late 20s, not because something catastrophic happened, but because nothing was happening. Her life felt like it was on pause. Safe but dull, stable but lifeless. She realized she'd built such thick walls to keep chaos out, that she also kept life out. Her therapist told her something simple that stuck with her. You're not in control. You never were. But you are capable. That's what matters. That shift from control to capability was the beginning of her healing. Because here's the truth. The world is uncertain. People will disappoint you. Plans will change. Emotions will rise and fall. You will make mistakes. There's no version of life where everything aligns perfectly forever. And that's okay. The point isn't to eliminate chaos. The point is to learn how to live within it, to dance with the unknown, to breathe in discomfort and still move forward. Sarah started small. She stopped over-planning her weekends. She allowed space for randomness, for quiet, for not knowing. She even traveled alone for the first time, with no itinerary. She got lost in a foreign city, ate something she couldn't pronounce, made a friend she never expected. And she was okay, more than okay. She was alive. Control is not evil. It's just limited. It's a tool, not a lifestyle. It works in some areas, your schedule, your habits, your mindset. But when control becomes your identity, your defense, your emotional shield, it starts to suffocate the very parts of you that are meant to grow, feel, connect, evolve. So maybe it's time to ask yourself honestly, what am I trying so hard to control? Because I'm too afraid to let life surprise me? And more importantly, what has that control cost me? Not in terms of productivity, but in terms of joy, presence, freedom. Because sometimes the thing you're clinging to for safety is the very thing holding you back from truly living. Chapter 2. The cost of trying to control everything. You tell yourself you're doing the right thing, planning ahead, thinking 2 steps forward, staying on top of everything. You build systems, double-check every detail, mentally rehearse conversations before they happen. You don't just prepare for the worst. You try to prevent it entirely. And for a while, it works. You're seen as responsible, reliable, the one who has it all together. But what no one sees is how tired you are. What they don't see is how your mind never shuts off. How you lie awake at night, running simulations in your head. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? You think you're avoiding chaos, but really, you're living in it. Quiet chaos, invisible, internal chaos. Control doesn't just wear you down, it isolates you. Because in trying to keep everything perfect, you start pushing people away. You don't delegate because you think no one will do it like you. You don't open up because vulnerability feels like risk. You don't rest because rest feels like losing your grip. Over time, the cost begins to show, not all at once, but in little cracks. You stop feeling present. You're always somewhere else in your head. You stop trusting others. You're always second-guessing their choices. You stop trusting yourself. You're always anxious that one wrong move will ruin everything. This is the hidden price of control. Anxiety becomes your default state. Not because something bad has happened, but because something might. And your body lives in a constant low-grade fight or flight. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, a nervous system that never gets a break. Burnout creeps in, not because you're lazy or incapable, but because your mind has been sprinting for years without pause. You've built a life that looks stable from the outside, but inside, it feels like you're standing on a house of cards. You know it's fragile. You just hope no one else notices. And the worst part, control doesn't actually stop bad things from happening. People still disappoint you. Plans still fall apart. Life still throws curveballs, but now you're too exhausted to handle them with grace. Because you've spent all your energy trying to avoid the very thing that's inevitable, uncertainty. I remember talking to a client once. He was a high-performing entrepreneur, the kind of person people admire. But he was quietly unraveling. He told me, "I've built a team, a business, a routine. But I feel like I can't breathe unless everything goes exactly as planned. One unexpected email can ruin my whole day. My wife says I'm always on edge. My kid once spilled juice on my laptop and I lost it. Not because of the mess, but because I wasn't ready for it. I don't even know who I am when I'm not in control." That sentence stuck with me. I don't know who I am when I'm not in control. When control becomes your identity, your entire sense of self is tied to how well you can manage everything. And that's dangerous, because what happens when something slips? When life demands flexibility instead of rigidity? When someone you love needs you to be present, not perfect? You crack, or worse, you shut down. Control doesn't give you peace. It gives you pressure. It doesn't give you freedom. It builds you a prison, a perfectly organized, high-functioning, emotionally suffocating prison. But there's another way. The solution isn't to abandon structure or stop caring. The solution is to shift your relationship with control, to stop using it as a shield against discomfort, and start using it as a tool to support your growth. You don't have to control everything to feel safe. You don't have to fix every problem to be worthy. You don't have to manage every moment to be loved. It starts with small acts of trust, letting someone else take the lead, allowing space in your calendar for the unexpected, leaving parts of your day unplanned, and discovering that the world doesn't fall apart. It continues with deeper reflection. What are you really afraid will happen if you stop controlling everything? What wound are you trying to cover by staying busy, sharp, prepared? Who are you when things don't go the way you imagined? And slowly, you begin to remember. You're not here to control life. You're here to live it. To experience it with all its messiness, wonder, risk, and depth. To be surprised. To be moved. To grow not by avoiding the unexpected, but by responding to it with presence and trust. Because peace doesn't come from having everything under control. Peace comes from knowing that you'll be okay even when things aren't. Chapter 3. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. Why is it so hard to let go? Because we've been taught over and over again that holding on is strength, that if we just try harder, push longer, force ourselves through, we'll eventually win. Letting go, that's quitting. That's weak. That's what you do when you've failed. But that belief is a lie. A beautiful sounding lie that keeps us stuck. Letting go is not failure. It is wisdom. It is a conscious decision to stop feeding energy into what no longer serves you. It's not giving up. It's waking up. We cling because we believe we're protecting ourselves. We think, if I let go, everything will fall apart. So we hold on to relationships that have long since stopped nourishing us, to jobs that drain our spirit, to identities that don't reflect who we are anymore. We hold on because letting go feels like falling into the unknown. But what if the real danger isn't in letting go? What if the real danger is in holding on too long? Imagine carrying a heavy backpack through life. It's filled with expectations, regrets, pressure, perfectionism, fear of judgment, fear of change. You've carried it so long that you forget it's even there. It's shaping your posture, your pace, your perspective. And one day, someone asks, "Why don't you put it down?" And you say, "Because I've always had it. I don't know who I'd be without it." That's where the courage comes in. Letting go is not passive, it's an active, brave step. It's saying, "I'm willing to find out who I am when I'm not burdened by all of this." So how do we let go? Not all at once, not in some grand gesture of surrender, but in moments, in choices. You begin by noticing what you're holding onto, what drains you, what makes you feel small, tense, contracted. What stories are looping in your mind that tell you you're not enough? You bring awareness to those things, not judgment, not blame, just awareness. Then you ask, is this helping me grow, or is it keeping me stuck? If it's fear keeping you attached, that's your sign. Letting go starts with acceptance, acceptance that some things are outside your control. Acceptance that pain is part of life, but suffering often comes from resistance. Acceptance that endings are not enemies. They are invitations, then comes permission. You give yourself permission to say no, to rest, to stop chasing, to stop fixing what was never yours to fix. You allow yourself to feel discomfort without rushing to fix it. You allow space in your day. Not to be productive, but just to breathe. Letting go can be as simple as pausing before reacting, as gentle as exhaling when your mind starts to spiral, as bold as walking away from something that once defined you. And what happens when you do? You start to feel lighter. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop carrying what you don't need. You reclaim energy that was stuck in overthinking, overplanning, overcontrolling. You feel more present, able to meet this moment as it is, not how you think it should be. You become more curious, more open, more connected to yourself and to others. Relationships deepen because you're no longer trying to control them. Your creativity expands because you're no longer policing your ideas. Your peace returns, not as something you force, but something you allow. Letting go gives you space to evolve, because who you were 5 years ago, 5 months ago, even 5 minutes ago, is not who you are now, and growth requires release. A tree cannot grow taller if it refuses to shed its old leaves. A river cannot flow if it's frozen in fear. The moment you let go, even a little, you start to make room. Room for new ideas, new opportunities, new versions of yourself. You realize that life is not a script to be followed, it's a dance to be felt. And some of the most beautiful moves are improvised. So, what would happen if you stopped gripping so tightly? What might enter your life if you opened your hands? Letting go is not a loss. It's not a resignation, it's a recalibration. It's saying, I don't need to know exactly where I'm going to trust the next step. I don't need to control the outcome to stay aligned with my values. I don't need everything to be perfect to feel peace right now. What if today, just today, you let something go? An expectation, a grudge, a story that says you're not enough unless you're in control. What if that one release is what creates the space for everything else to begin? Letting go is not weakness, it is strength refined, it is wisdom earned. And it might just be the smartest thing you ever do. Chapter 4. Inner freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control. I want to tell you about a moment that changed everything for me. I was sitting in my car, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel. Not because I was driving, but because I didn't know where else to put all the tension in my body. I had just come out of a meeting that didn't go the way I planned. It wasn't a disaster, but in my head, It was the beginning of everything falling apart. My chest was tight, my mind racing. I kept thinking, if I had just said this, if I had prepared more, if I had controlled the room better. And then, out of nowhere, something inside me just snapped, not in a dramatic way. More like a quiet exhale I didn't know I was holding. I let go of the wheel. I leaned back. And this sentence floated into my mind like it had always been there. You don't need to carry this anymore. That moment didn't solve all my problems, but it cracked something open in me. For the first time in years, I felt light, not because anything outside changed, but because inside, something had shifted. I had spent so much of my life trying to hold everything together, my image, my plans, my emotions, my outcomes. I believed that if I could just control it all, I would finally feel okay. But that belief had become a burden. It didn't lead to peace. It led to pressure, performance, panic. What I discovered is that real freedom, the kind that lasts, is not external. It's not found in perfect circumstances. It's found within. And that inner freedom begins the moment you stop trying to control everything. Think about someone like Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, stripped of his power, his platform, his position. And yet, he emerged not bitter, but wise. Not hardened, but softened. He couldn't control the system, but he could control his response to it. He let go of hatred. He let go of blame. And because of that, he became free long before he ever walked out of his cell. Or take Viktor Frankl, surviving the horrors of a concentration camp. Everything taken from him, except one thing, his ability to choose how he responded. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, he wrote, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. These men remind us of something profound. Freedom is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of clarity. And that clarity comes from letting go, not of responsibility, but of the illusion that you can or must control it all. In my own journey, I began to experiment. Small things at first. I stopped trying to have the perfect answer in conversations. I let plans be more flexible. I stopped interrupting silence with noise. And slowly, something incredible happened. I started to feel safe, not because I was in control, but because I was finally in tune. I began to notice the world more, the way light hits the wall in the morning, the taste of coffee when I'm not scrolling through my phone, the sound of someone's laughter when I'm not trying to respond quickly, but just listening. It wasn't dramatic, it was real, and realness, it turns out, is freedom. There's a softness that comes with letting go, a gentleness with yourself, a kind of compassion that control can never offer. Because control is rooted in fear, and fear hardens us. But surrender opens us. And here's the beautiful irony. The moment I stopped trying to control my life was the moment I started feeling like I was actually living it. I started meeting people more honestly, showing up more fully, saying I don't know without shame, asking for help without guilt, laughing at mistakes instead of hiding them, and I realized freedom isn't found in being perfect, it's found in being present. So if you're tired of holding it all together, tired of the pressure, the performance, the pretending, I want you to know this: you are allowed to let go. You are allowed to rest, to breathe, to trust. You are allowed to not have all the answers. You are allowed to release the version of you that's built entirely on control and rediscover the version that's built on truth. Because the real you, the one beneath the fear, beneath the masks, beneath the anxiety, that version of you has been waiting for you to stop managing life and start meeting it. Not with a script, but with a heart. Not with a plan, but with presence. And when you do, you'll find that freedom isn't something you earn, it's something you remember. Chapter 5. When you stop controlling, you start truly living. So what happens when you stop trying to control everything? What happens when you loosen your grip, let go of the constant planning, the self-pressure, the fear that if you don't stay on top of it all, your life will fall apart? What happens is, you begin to return to yourself, to the person you were before the fear took over. Before the world told you that being enough required being perfect. You begin to live again, not just function, not just survive, but actually live. You start noticing the mornings. The air feels different, your breath feels softer. You're not rushing to win the day. You're simply meeting it, moment by moment. You find yourself laughing. Not because things are perfect, but because you're no longer weighed down by the need for them to be. You respond to challenges with calm, not because everything is under control, but because you trust yourself to handle the unknown. This is what it means to live truthfully, to live from the inside out. Not ruled by expectations, not performing for approval, not bending to every wave of anxiety, but rooted in clarity, in authenticity, in presence. And that shift, it changes everything. When you stop controlling, you start listening to your body, to your intuition, to what you truly need. You stop reacting out of fear and start acting from intention. You begin making choices not to avoid pain, but to move toward peace. You start saying no without guilt. You start saying yes without fear. You begin to speak up, show up, slow down. You begin to feel more, yes, even the hard things. But you're no longer afraid of them because you trust they'll pass. You trust yourself to feel without being consumed. And that, right there, is emotional freedom. So what does this shift actually mean for your life? It means your relationships change. People feel safer around you. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're real. You're present. You're no longer trying to fix or control them. You're simply showing up with compassion, with presence, with openness. It means your creativity flows again. When your mind is no longer busy managing every outcome, space opens up. For ideas, for play, for exploration. You get curious again. You take risks again. You create, not to prove something, but because something within you wants to be expressed. It means you come home to yourself. No more pretending. No more exhausting masks, just you. With your flaws, your light, your truth. And that self is enough. More than enough. So now what? What do you do with all of this? You take it with you, into your next breath, into your next conversation. Into the way you speak to yourself when you wake up tomorrow. You remember when you feel the urge to control everything again. That it's okay to soften, to trust, to let life move. You practice. You won't be perfect. That's not the goal. But little by little, you'll learn to return faster. To choose presence over panic. To choose trust over tension. And eventually, it becomes your default. Not the tightness, not the fear, but the freedom. You'll find yourself standing in the middle of an ordinary day, feeling something extraordinary, peace. Not because everything is certain, but because you are. You'll look in the mirror and see someone who's no longer performing. You'll walk into the world not needing to prove, just ready to participate. You'll start to feel like you belong. Not out there, but in here, in your own body, in your own life. This is what it means to live truly, deeply, freely. When you stop trying to control the current, you begin to flow with it. When you stop building walls, you start building bridges. Between your mind and your heart, your fears and your faith, your plans and your presence. When you stop controlling, you begin living. You've made it to the end of this journey, not because you've found all the answers, but because you've dared to ask the right questions. And maybe, just maybe, something inside you feels different now, lighter, calmer, clearer, because you've started to see that the weight you've been carrying, the pressure to control everything, to be everything, to fix everything, was never yours to bear. You've seen that control, though it promises safety, often delivers stress. That perfection, though it promises love, often delivers loneliness. And that freedom, the kind of freedom that matters, isn't found in having a perfect plan. It's found in finally letting go of the need to have one. So now, the question is no longer, how do I control my life? The question is, how do I show up fully in my life, just as it is? That is the shift, that is the transformation. From managing life, to meeting it. From fearing the unknown, to flowing with it. From gripping so tightly, to opening your hands and your heart. You have a choice every day, in every moment, to return to the tightness, the panic, the old patterns, or to breathe, to soften, to remember that peace isn't a destination. It's a decision. It's the way you relate to yourself, to others, to the present, and the more you choose presence over pressure, the more you'll feel like yourself again. Not the version trying to keep it all together, but the version who's finally ready to live with intention, with courage, with heart. So if this message stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's tired, someone who's been trying hard for too long, someone who needs permission to pause, to trust, to begin again. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you're letting go of today. Tell me where you've been gripping too tight and what it would feel like to release. And if this spoke to you, if this gave you something real, subscribe. Not just because it supports this channel, but because it means you're choosing to keep showing up for yourself. Choosing to keep walking toward truth, toward softness, toward freedom. You don't have to make a big move today. You just have to take a small, honest step. Let go of one thing, one story, one pressure, and notice what opens up in its place, because the most powerful transformations rarely come with fireworks. They come with whispers, with quiet moments when you finally realize you don't have to live the way you used to. You are allowed to live differently now, more grounded, more open, more you. And I hope you do. I hope today is the beginning of your return, not to the version of you that was surviving, but to the one that's finally, fully alive.